Good morning. Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Handouts are coming around. Thank you so much to Norman for helping. Everybody's gonna, I know usually when I teach, I don't even bother. I just put the text I'm using. But you're gonna need your book today. The Torah Study books are on the far side right now, on page 250, but I'll come back to that. Rabbi Barris is on vacation with his family. He planned it a long time ago. So you get me. You're stuck with me. What can I say? Thank you. You missed like the most, oh, you have one. Okay, if anybody needs, let me know. Shabbat Shalom. All right, let's sing. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat medorotam berit olam. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat medorotam berit olam. B'nei uvein b'nei Yisrael oti le'olam, oti le'olam. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat le'dorotam berit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat le'dorotam berit olam. Uvayom hashvi Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat le'dorotam berit olam. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Amen. L'chaim. Our blessing over. It's a miracle. Keeps lasting. All right, our blessing over Torah Study. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot b'divrei Torah. Amen, amen. All right, it is so wonderful for us to be together. I have a few handouts up here if people need. We still need. Our Torah portion this week. You have. I thought I saw another hand. Thank you. Hi. Yeah. This week we start the amazing story of Joseph. Whenever I study with kids, I'm like, did you see the musical? Never have they ever seen this musical. I know, it's so good. So we start the story of Joseph. As you know, Jacob has tons of sons, right? Because he has 4 wives. There's a competition between Rachel and Leah to see who can have kids, and Rachel's barren, and they start giving their maidservants, and so he gets built up finally, right? Our first ancestor to really get built up into a tribe, and we will see in the future that all of these boys, right, inherit Judaism and the covenant from Jacob. He's the first to pass it on to more than just one of his sons. Joseph is Rachel's oldest son. Rachel, of course, is the favorite wife. Yay. Okay, no, I'm just kidding. I was like, so Rachel's the favorite wife. Joseph's the oldest of the sons. Rachel dies, giving birth to his little brother, Benjamin. She's buried on the road. She's the only of the matriarchs not to be married, or matriarchs or patriarchs not to be married in the tomb of Machpelah. But Joseph gets favored status from his brother. All right, so lots of things to unpack in terms of the favored status. Is it something particular about Joseph himself? Is it because he's the first child of Jacob's favorite wife? Is it, or is it just that this poor kid needs some special attention because his mother has died? That being said, the boys don't like him. Right? We see him in the beginning of the chapter tattling on his older brothers, telling them about his dreams, which are so hard to interpret, right? Where they all have ears of corn and their ear of corn bows down to his, right? It's not a rocket science kind of a thing. And one day out in the field, they decide they're going to kill him. They throw him into a pit. And Judah says, let's not kill him. Let's make some money out of this situation, right? And here comes a caravan, and they sell him off to slavery, right? We need this, okay? We need this so that we can save Egypt and the surrounding regions from famine, right? Okay, our triennial cycle has us reading from section 2. So section 2 is this brief interlude from the Joseph story where we actually hone in on Judah. But we need the context of the Joseph story to understand Judah's situation. So in our Torah reading today, we're going to be looking at Genesis chapter 38. Chapter 38 is this interlude where it's all about Judah and Judah building his family, and a lot of things that ensue from here. Okay. I will tell you, this is what I always tell my bar and bat mitzvah students, the Torah is rated PG-13. This is a rated PG-13 section of the Torah. This is not kid stuff. Okay, so we're going to read super slowly. So I want to just read Genesis 38, verse 1. In our plout, it's on page 250. I know not everybody uses plout. Wait, where do we start? We start here? Here. Yes. Okay, will you read verse 1 for us? Just verse 1.
Around that time, Judah parted from his brothers and fell in with an Adullamite named Hira.
He had to turn the page. It was one verse. Okay. All right. So we're going to look a little bit at the Hebrew. There's 2 Hebrew words that I've highlighted by pulling them out and giving you the definition from Safaria. Okay? Okay, so it says, Vayehi be'et hahi, v'yarad, v'yered Yehuda. Yered, okay. So, that's the second one. I didn't put them in order. Awesome. Okay, Yered, we might, yarida, to go down, to descend, to march down, to sink down. All right, so we talk about actually when people leave. Remember when we moved to Israel? It's called Aliyah, going up. When they leave, they're going down, okay? So he's leaving home, but we're going to go into a little text here from Rashi to see what else might yarida mean or vayared mean in this context. Norman, will you read number 1 on the handout?
Number 1 what?
On the handout.
definition 1.
No, not definition 1. Sorry. The Rashi.
Why is this chapter placed here, interrupting the story of Joseph? To teach that his brothers brought him down from his greatness when they saw the distress of their father. They said to Yehuda, "You said to sell him. If you had said to return him, we would have listened to you."
Okay. All right, so here, Yared going down, it can also mean being depressed, being isolated, right? So it doesn't tell us why, but Rashi tells us, right? Judah was in this great place, right? For those of us who know the musical, right? Judah was the eldest of the children of Israel, with Simeon and Levi next in line, right? So Judah was the oldest, right? Firstborn son. He should be like in charge of his brothers, inheriting all of the firstborn son stuff, right? But the boys blame him. All right, so we always think about Judah as maybe not being so bad because he's the one who really saves Joseph's life, right? Don't kill him, sell him, right? But they say, you said sell him. You were the leader. If you would have said bring him back to dad, we would have done it, right? So he's bearing, according to Rashi, he's bearing guilt. He's carrying that with him. There's an implication that he is sad and depressed. And part of that is because of him feeling his role as firstborn son, leader of his brothers, and that he has failed his brother. Well, but Reuben moves no. Wait, Reuben was, you're right. Reuben was the eldest. Simeon, Levi, Naphtali, Issachar, Asher, Dan, Zebulun, Gad. What, yeah.
I have a request from somebody watching.
I'm using? Oh, okay. No, you're right. Okay, well, I guess maybe the question is that Judah, I think the thing is that they did listen to Judah. You're right. I'm sorry, it's Reuben. And the song in my head, like Judah was the, okay. Reuben is the eldest, you're right. Reuben, by the way, moves his father's couch, which is another PG-13 section of the Torah, which implies that he slept with one of his, not his mom, but his brother's mom, right? Okay. His brothers listened to him. They turned to him as a leader. So they might have listened to him otherwise. All right. We see him leaving, isolating himself. There's another word here in the Hebrew that I want to look at. It's like it's a nif also, the nun drops. Okay, so, Me'et achiv vayait. I wrote it on my thing and now I can't see it. I should look in here. Okay, yeah. Vayet, yes, okay. So this word, I gave you the definition of two, which is it's a big definition, to stretch out, extend, spread out, pitch, turn, pervert, incline, bend, bow. Okay, so here, there is something about his relationship with this Adulamite, Hira. I want to keep that in mind too. Hira, we may have never heard of before. Even if we know this story, figure that we seem to forget about, I think Hira plays a big role in the conversation about what happens with Judah, right? And he's inclining himself towards him. So think about, I was listening this morning, I listened to Radio Lab, and they were talking about kind of like aphorisms, colloquialisms, proverbs, right? And they were saying misery loves company, and they were trying to disprove it. That's what this show does. It has a weird question that it dives deep into, okay? Like, are these adages even true? Does misery really love company, right? Like, so that's what they were talking about. Guess what, right? When we're depressed, right? The psychology is that the only thing that's going to get us out of it is being around people and having friends, right? People who care about us, even though our instinct, of course, is to self-isolate. So here we have Judah in one line. Judah is depressed. And so what does he do? He leaves his family, right? But he inclines towards Hira, right? He makes a friend in one line. He relocates, makes a friend. It's a lot of things. Okay, so we want to just pay attention to some of these words. Okay, so Rashi's arguing that Yehuda's descent is initiated by his relationship with his brothers, who cast him out due to their regret of the sale. And it seems that he, we can't tell if it's the brothers or if it's him that initiates the situation. But we get the implication from the Rashi that he is ashamed by what he did, upsetting his father, isolating his brother out. But it doesn't end with his isolation, right? He gets a friend. And now we're going to see that he's going to get married. So let's read the next two. Let's read just the next line. Edith, will you read number 2? Just the next line.
There Judah saw the daughter of a Canaanite named Shua. He took her to wife and coupled with her.
Okay. All right, so why I wanted to pause is just because we know very little about this woman, right? What do we know about her? She's a Canaanite. Now, we've been reading very, very closely. You might remember that our matriarchs were not fans of people coupling with Canaanites, okay? Right? This is why... What? Right, Esau coupled with the Canaanite, remember, and Rebekah was disgusted and upset about it, right? So when Isaac's wife was being searched for, they had to go back to Abraham's homeland. You're not supposed to marry Canaanites. So he's not only separating himself from the family, he's marrying out, right? So it's a little bit of a double down here. Okay. So maybe why do you think he would do this? Let's dig in. Let's play psychologist. What do we think Judah is doing with this behavior or trying to accomplish? Okay, separating himself from his brothers and his family. Right, even further, right? Even further than just a physical separation.
Running away from his failures.
Oh, yeah.
He's running away from his failures.
Awesome. Running away. Isn't that what we all want to do? When we mess up, right? I'm not going back, right? That's the hard thing. Hard thing to go back and face up to your failures, move on. Okay. So maybe he thinks, by marrying a Canaanite, he's no longer worthy, right? No way Dad's picking me for next in line anymore, right? I'm going to be like Esau before me, my uncle, so, okay. So, all right, so marrying out. Now we're going to read a little bit of a chunk. All right, so we're going to read 3 through 8, verses 3 through 8. Bless you.
She conceived and bore a son, and he named him She conceived again and bore a son, and named him Onan. Once again she bore a son, and named him Shelah. He was at Chezib when she bore him. Judah got a wife for his firstborn. Her name was Tamar. But Judah's firstborn, was displeasing to the Lord, and the Lord took his life. Then Judah said to Onan, "Join with your brother's wife and do your duty by her as a brother-in-law and provide offspring to your brother."
Okay, we're going to pause. We're going to pause because we need to just what is happening, okay? All right, so there is something, and it takes up way too much of the Talmud. You studied it with us. There is something in the Talmud called yibum and chalitza, okay? Yibum comes from this. Okay, now we're going to back up. Okay, so yibum, I gave you these definitions, yes? Yes, okay. I'm so glad when I do the right thing. Okay, number 2, we're going to look at what yibum and chalitza are. Do you want to read? Anyone?
Yibum and chalitza are two related Jewish practices that deal with the marriage of a widow to the brother of her deceased husband. Yibum, also known as levirate marriage, this is the Torah-mandated practice of a widow marrying the brother of her deceased husband. This practice is intended to perpetuate the name of the deceased husband. Chalitza, this is an alternative ceremony that can be performed if the widow and her deceased husband's brother do not want to go through with yibum. The ceremony involves the widow removing the brother's shoe, spitting on the floor, and reciting a phrase. This ceremony frees the widow to marry anyone she chooses except for a Kohen.
All right. Okay. Woo! All right, so here, Judah, right? He gives Er, and we're going to look at in a couple verses, like what did Er do that was displeasing to the Lord? Really fun times to unpack Er and Onan's sin. By the way, the English word onanism comes from this section. All right, so heirs, something goes awry, heirs killed by God. And now Onan, instructed by his father, is told, go and sleep with your brother's wife, right? A forbidden sexual relationship in any other circumstance, right? You're not allowed to marry, even if your brother divorced her, you're not allowed to marry her, right? But if your brother dies, you have to marry her, all right? Unless you do this chalitza ceremony. By the way, they still do this in some aspects of the Orthodox world, and you can Google and watch a ceremony, should you so choose. In Jewish museums, sometimes you'll see a sandal, and it'll say, this is the chalitza sandal. This is what they're talking about. Where she's supposed to take the sandal off his foot, spit, right? Obviously, you're despicable that you won't do this for me, right? Says this little ceremony. All right. So Yibum is a way to continue the tribal line, right? That and to give the woman that protection of having a son. Okay, so. I have a question. Yes.
Is the son marries?
Yeah, we need, I don't know, isn't there a microphone here?
You took it.
I took it. Oh, I gave you, do we only have one mic?
Should be 2.
Yeah, usually we have 2. Sorry.
So my question is, why does the son who marries the widow not get the honor of having his own line represented and his own son being called his son and not the line of his brothers?
Okay. So if he has more than one, the first one goes to the dead brother. Anybody after that is his. All right, there we go. Now I have 2 mics, and I can juggle. I can't juggle.
He could have another wife. He could probably have another wife, and that one would be in his line too.
That's right. You also, right, remember these men can have multiple wives, right? Not anymore. But the Yemen, right, Jews in Arab lands had multiple wives, but there was an Ashkenazi law that said for 1,000 years we're not allowed to have multiple wives, and then that expired in like 2004 or something, and they were like, let's keep it going. Okay, so so this is, okay, so I just wanted a little brief interlude because this seems like it's a strange thing, okay? So brief interlude. The point of the story, though, is that Er did something displeasing to God. Er dies, so Judah says, here, take my next son, marry him. He dies also. Yeah, cliffhanger, right? Right? Remember, he has these 3 boys. Okay, so we're going to go back in and just read one more line. Yeah, and then we're going to figure out what's wicked about them. So if we can read just verse 8. I think, oh, did I, sorry. I'm bad with the mic this morning. Okay.
8.
Yeah.
Then Judah said to Onan, "Join with your brother's wife and do your duty by her as a brother-in-law and provide offspring for your brother." But Onan, knowing that the seed would not count as his, let it go to waste whenever he joined with his brother's wife, so as not to provide offspring for his brother. What he did was displeasing to the Lord, and he took his life also.
Okay, perfect. So, all right, now they're both dead. Both boys are dead. I said that very casually. Okay. All right, Judah lost 2 of his sons. He has 3 sons. He lost 2 of his sons. This is a big deal. So we want to stop it. Do you want to comment now? Or do you want, all right.
It's a question that I have. So the Yibum says Torah mandated practice, but where does this appear? Because I don't recall having read it up until this point.
So this is the origin of Yibum.
So this
This
was
is where
more
we
of
see it
a-
for the first time.
This is more of was like a local practice that was followed by the Canaanites.
So that's a good question. I don't know enough about Canaanite law to know if this was a law there. It's very possible. That's a great, let's do some research question.
The Hittites practiced it as well before.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so it sounds like it was in the region, so that makes some sense. That's very cool. All right, so we get this idea of perpetuating the line. All right, so now the question becomes, what did these boys do that was so bad? Okay? We get more of a hint with Er, right? Because Er, what does Er say to himself? It says in the text, this isn't going to be my kid. Oh, sorry, Onan, sorry. Thank you. You got to help me with my names today. All right, so Onan says, this isn't going to be my kid. I don't necessarily want to have a kid in somebody else's honor. So what does he do? Thank you. All right, okay.
He spilled his seed.
Yes,
In
okay.
other words, he pulled out.
Yes, he pulls out. So I love the Latin is coitus interruptus, okay? All right, so it's as I said, this is not the stuff we study with our 10-year-olds, right? A little PG-13. All right, coitus interruptus, clearly the sin of Onan. Now, if you are an English person and you know what onanism is, though, what does it refer to? Masturbation. Is he masturbating? No, right? He's just not, he's pulling out, right? He's pulling out. Okay. Yes, I actually had, so I took, I was always a nerd, but in rabbinical school, I took extra classes, more than what I needed. One of those was vices. And then we had to write a final paper. So I wrote mine about masturbation in Jewish text. By the way, there's only one thing about women masturbating because right? The Talmud's pretty obsessed with it, right? This is where it comes from. Yeah.
But this is something that was also against contraception. And the Christians use it as, no contraception because of this passage.
Okay. All right. So the way that we can make the connection, right, between this sin of Er and Onan and masturbation is, of course, the spilling of seed, right? Wasted seed. Maimonides has this whole thing about how it depletes you. It's your energy. All right. So there does come from this a lot of text about the dangers of spilling seed. As somebody who likes to engage in Torah study, we can discuss and debate if this is actually what the Torah meant. Did the Torah actually mean that people should not masturbate, that this is unhealthy for you? Because guess what? This is the text. This is it, guys. All of that stuff about in Christianity against masturbating, there's beautiful rabbinic question of, there's this great book, like Fear of an Angry Dog. I think it's Solomon Auslander. It's on my shelf. I'm trying to look at it. Anyways, he talks about what he grew up in like this Haredi community, like hearing, and he heard that all of the spilled seed that he spills, which he shares with us, he spilled a lot as a teen, that you're going to boil in it in the world to come. Okay, that's what his rabbis told him. All from this. All from Onan and coitus interruptus, okay? All right. So I have here, so Rashi connects it back, text number 3. Rashi saying, what was wicked in the eyes of the Lord, like the wickedness of Onan, and committing the same sin. This must have been the case because it says on Onan, and the Lord slew him also. Onan's death was for a similar reason then as Er's death, because we don't know why Er died, right? But since it says also, must be the same sin. All right? So so we know why Onan didn't do it, right? Onan pulled out because Onan didn't want a kid that wasn't actually like credited to him. But why did Er pull out? So she shouldn't bear children and her beauty thereby become impaired. Yes. We're all hideous after we have children. So, yeah. I'm glad you're laughing. I find it amusing too. Okay. Yes.
Does this have any connection to God's promise to Abraham that he would multiply, and he would be the father of a nation with a greater than the sands of the ocean and the stars of the sky?
Okay, I think the Yibum does, right? Yibum does in terms of like continuing the lines and having us continue to live. Right. Definitely the coitus interruptus doesn't have a lot to do with it. But it being a problem, maybe, yes. All right, and so I gave you also the Jewish Virtual Library's definition of onanism. All right, it's good times. Okay, and then the question of what was the real sin. So this is an aside a little bit, but not, I can't help myself, right? This is like the PG-13 section. We have so much happening, right? We have thousands of years of shame from this text. Thousands of years of shame from this text, which really isn't about masturbation. Pretty amazing. This is why it's great to read the original document, right? Okay. All right, so we're going to continue the story, reading verses 11 and 12, and then I just want to pause 11 and 12.
Don't you want to know, you have a question here, what was the real sin? Wasn't the real sin not performing the levir's duty of providing a child for the deceased?
Yeah, so the real sin for Onan, right, was like that he wouldn't do this levirate marriage, and it displeased, and it displeased God. Also, right, and then if we believe Rashi, which we tend to do, right, then the sin of Er was that he didn't want to perpetuate, right, because he wanted his wife to keep her beautiful figure. I do want to pull back before we read 11 and 12 and think about Judah's psyche, right? We already talked about Judah separating himself from his family, maybe feeling unworthy of being like the inheritor of God's blessing. taking up with this Canaanite, right? How do you think Judah might be experiencing the death of his sons? Okay, so since it wasn't on the mic, I'll just repeat. Payback, retribution for what he did to Joseph, taking Joseph from Jacob. Right, so he might be experiencing this as divine punishment, right? We see that it seems, Rashi is talking about it being divine punishment to the sons for what they did, but Judah might be experiencing it. We don't know, right? We don't get to, he didn't sit down with a psychologist and we don't get to read the notes. Judah might be experiencing it as a continuation of I deserve this, I'm so terrible.
But could it be that the sons saw Judah separated from his family and did not want to perpetuate it as themselves because they saw the depression of their dad, and they did not want to perpetuate that further on versus making sure she doesn't look pretty. They didn't want to perpetuate that with the family.
I love that. Right? I think that does happen. This is why it's fun to play psychologist, right? It does happen that people see, the situation of their parents and say, I don't want that, right? And they might answer that question in different ways. In this case, it might be that they didn't want to have kids.
One other motivation for Onan might have been the fact that he would have lost some of his inheritance, because once Er was gone, Onan would have inherited half of the estate, but if there was a child, that his inheritance would have been diminished.
Ooh, very good. Okay, yes, there are laws of inheritance, right? So he would be having to share the estate with this future child, which is biologically his, but not his, according to their society and how they live. Very interesting. Okay, this is good stuff. Good stuff. Okay. All right. What we do know for a fact, Judah just lost 2 of his sons. All right? Pretty sad, pretty depressing. Okay, so let's read 11 and 12. Just 11 and 12. Do we have? Yeah, thank you. Billy.
Then Judah said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, "Stay as a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah grows up." For he thought he too might die like his brothers. So Tamar went to live in her father's house. A long time afterward, Shua's daughter, the wife of Judah, died. When his period of mourning was over, Judah went up to Timnah to his sheep shearers, together with his friend Hurrah, the Adullamite.
All right. Okay. Great. Thank you. All right. So, plot thickens, right? Okay. Judah tells Tamar, Shelah's too young. Hang in. Yeah, go live with your dad. When he's old enough, he will marry you. Right? In the meantime, Judah's wife dies. Okay, so now he's lost 2 of his sons and his wife. So what does he do? He goes to his friend. Right? Here's Hira again. Hira's like the hero, right? So here's Hira again, taking his friend and taking him out, right? Sheep shearing festivals, I gotta say, I want to claim that this happened to me in Indiana because you guys would believe that, but it would be a lie. Right, but we do have, right, the 4-H fair and all of these things. When it's season, people all get together. Okay, people all get together. So this is a kind of a fun time. He's taking him out partying, okay? Here's taking him out. We're seeing him step in as that friend again to support Judah. Okay, so we have a little bit. So I put on here, Judah's hanging out with his friend. Keep it in mind. We will come back to it. All right. All right, so now we have, again, a very juicy section. I hope no children are watching this online. Okay, so we're going to read a big chunk from 13 to 23. But first. Yes, Richard. What's up with sheep shearing?
What's up with sheep shearing? Is it a party? Is it an event? It's a gathering? We have seen sheep shearing before. It's here for a reason. I just don't know.
Okay, let me tell, as a farm girl, I'm just kidding, I grew up in a big city, but I grew up in Indiana too. Okay, so, let me tell you, when do we shear sheep? This logically makes sense. In the spring. We shear sheep in the spring, right? They want to take off their winter coats, they're hot, okay? It takes a long time to shear sheep. You do this, now you use razors. I'm electric. I can only imagine back in the day, this must have taken forever. You shear the sheep, you have all of this wool, right? Then you need to wash the wool. We dye the wool. I don't know what that, spin it, all of those things to make it usable. This is a long process, but it's also spring, right? Spring is everybody's coming out, right? It's beautiful, things are budding, everybody's in the mood, right? Right? The animals are in the mood, people are in the mood. It is this great coming out of hibernation, right? Not just for literal bears, right? But metaphorically for everybody else. So yes, this is a time of people coming out, being social, getting together, and because it's an intense time of work, a lot of people will come together to do it who maybe, they're not it's more than just the herder, right? One person and their dogs, right, can herd a bunch of sheep, but you need multiple people in order to do the shearing. So it's a little bit of a party time. Thank you for the interlude. Okay, so. But you were going to read for us. All right.
You're getting your cardio today.
Yeah.
I have a question. So, Judah loses 2 sons, and he gets a nation named after him. And Aaron loses 2 sons, and he becomes the line of the priest. I just wonder about, is there growth because of that? Is there some kind of a sacrifice? It's interesting. 2 sons, Judah, Aaron.
That's so, okay. That is so beautiful. I can, what a beautiful thing to highlight, especially because, after, the worst, especially in these cases, right? These were young, healthy young men, right, who were starting their lives, really. How devastating it is to lose a child. And so much of, there's a moment, some parents, right? Part of our legacy is our kids, obviously. It can also be a focus of, what we believe our purpose in life is. So what a beautiful thing to uplift that here Judah's lost 2 sons, right? And we practice what? Judaism, right? And Aaron lost 2 of his sons, and he was the high priest. Right? I think it's a beautiful thing to uplift that even in overwhelming loss, we still have purpose, right? And if we can continue to function somehow, even differently, right? That we still have purpose and there's still work to be done through us. And we can even still be connected to God, which is hard. That's a lot to ask of a parent. That was such a beautiful uplift. Yeah.
I want to ask something in connection with what he said. I was thinking something along those lines, and it's the flip side on these kids, which is something that we discussed also when we discussed the Aaron situation. These kids, as you said, were young and were starting, and they had no second chance. They messed up, you are done.
Yeah.
So also what is the message there is that there are some things you are learning, you are young, you have no idea yet of what's going on in life, and then you mess up, and your learning process, there's no tshuva, there's nothing. It's just, there's no second chance, and I want to also understand what's happening there.
Yeah. Oh, you and everyone. Okay. Yeah. I will say that was beautiful. Again, I don't want to say, right, like, Aaron and Judah move forward, right? We'll see Judah comes back, right, to his brothers, and all of when the dad blesses him, he gives Judah one of the few actual positive blessings, right? It's not that he needed these things. Well, maybe he grew from it, but it's more so despite that happening, right? It's not, God doesn't kill your kids to teach you a lesson. That's, the rabbis will, we don't know, basically, right? It's not fair. What happens to Aaron, Onan, what happens to Aaron's sons? Again and again, we see death happen. And I think it's because the Torah, this holy book, is a reflection of our lives and our lived experience, right? And we don't get the why. We hear he did something displeasing. Does it mean he deserved it? He doesn't need a second chance, right? That's not, it's not fair, and we can't judge. But I think that the Torah is reflecting our reality, that these horrible things happen, and how am I going to make meaning out of it, right? But it doesn't mean, I will tell you, no one has ever been comforted by, your child was killed because your mezuzah was not hanging the right way. That's ridiculous, right? But it's said to people. These are questions that we're going to have to ask God, but it happens. I will tell you Maimonides' answer, it's why do bad things happen, right? Because we're people, and we live with people in the world. Those are his answers, right? So what does that mean? We have bodies, they decay, they grow old, they get sick, right? They get injured. We live with people, so we hurt each other in the world, right? So things happen it rains. There's monsoons, there's earthquakes. It's not comforting to.
It's more like a free will, you made a poor choice and then you get punished because of the free will that you have, because this is not that you got injured or something, or if there was a natural disaster, or it's more really you have free will, you made a poor choice and you get punished, and maybe it's punished by example, so that there's a deterrence and people don't do it again, and you are the poor guy that gives the example. And I'm not suggesting it's okay what they did. I'm only saying that in many, our whole foundation is based on Teshuvah.
Yes.
Starting over, on repairing yourself and healing. We have second chances, and some people don't get second chances for some reason. So that seems counterintuitive.
I hear you. I hear you. I agree with you, right? Some people do get second chances. There are plenty of people walking around in the world today who committed that same sin, right? It doesn't seem fair, but we don't know the answer, right? So the rabbis we don't know what happens after we die. In my version, we get to ask these questions and get answers. But yeah, we're going to keep going. Thank you. Will you read 13 through 23? It's a big section.
Hira, a minor character who appears only in this one place, presents a totally different three-picture of
Oh,
loyalty.
no, the actual text, the Torah text, sorry. The Torah text, verses 13 through 23.
And Tamar was told as follows: Behold, your father-in-law is coming up to Timnah to shear his sheep. So she removed her widow's garb from upon her, covered herself with a veil, and wrapped herself up. She then sat by the crossroads, which is on the road toward Timnah, for she saw that Shelah had grown, and she had not been given to him as a wife.
Okay, super brief pause. She's on the street corner, right? Okay, keep going.
When Judah saw her, he thought her to be a harlot, since she had covered her face. So he detoured to her by the road and said, Come, if you please, let me consort with you. For he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, What will you give me if you consort with me? He replied, I will send you a kid of the goats from the flock. And she said, Provided you leave a pledge until you send it. And he said, What pledge shall I give you? She replied, Your signet, your wrap, and your staff that is in your hand. And he gave them to her and consorted with her, and she conceived by him. Then she arose, left, and removed her veil from upon her, and she put on her widow's garb. Judah sent the kid of the goats through his friend the Adullamite to retrieve the pledge from the woman, but he did not find her. He inquired of the people of her place, Where is the prostitute, the one at the crossroads by the road? And they said, There was no prostitute here. So he returned to Judah and said, I did not find her. Even the local men said there was no prostitute here. So Judah said, Let her keep them, lest we become a laughingstock. I really sent her this kid, but you could not find her.
Okay, thank you. Woo! Right? This is like, I feel like we might have gone from PG-13 to R. I don't know. Okay, so here we have the situation, right? Tamar sees Shelah's grown up. She hasn't been married to him, so she takes matters into her own hands, right? She hears her father-in-law is going to the sheep shearing festival, right? She puts on her outfit, stands on the corner. He's like, hey, let's do this thing, right? Right? She takes his staff, his cord, these things that are very much like mark him as him, his signet, right? That's the most unique of them. And he thinks he's going to pay her with this kid. Now notice who he sends. Who does he send to go pay her? Hira. Hira the friend, okay? This character who nobody remembers his name, right? So he goes off to try and pay her, can't find her anywhere, and everybody in the town is saying, there's no prostitute here. What are you talking about, right? All right. So I have this section from Rabbi Avital Hochstein, who's highlighting Hira as showing up again and again in Judah's life, right? And she's talking about these three different sections of his loyalty, right? At the beginning, when Judah comes and he's new to town, right? This is the buddy he makes. He's depressed. This is the guy he leans on. And now we see when his wife passes away, who takes him out to have a good time, get him on his feet again? Hira, right? And the third time, Judah, I feel like this is the drunken next day. I don't know, he has to go pay this prostitute. You don't see Judah walking around town with a goat hey, where's a prostitute? Anybody know where a prostitute, right? No, he's saving his friend that embarrassing situation by going, right? And asking, is there a prostitute here? With obvious payment with him, all right? And by the way, I just imagine, right, the kid fully sheared, whatever. Okay, so, All right, so here is this friend who we often forget his name, stepping forward, being there for Judah. Okay, so, all right, so now we're going to read a little bit about Tamar. Before we go further, do we want to make any comments about Tamar?
Is it a movie?
It's so a movie, right? Like, Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat doesn't really have this section, but it could be its own musical. Yeah.
It strikes me that she conducted.
Hold it closer. There you
It
go.
strikes me that she conducted a pretty sophisticated negotiation. She wanted a receipt. She wanted. She wants his ring. She wants his staff and whatnot. So she was maybe a very experienced woman.
Oh, you think this wasn't her first rodeo?
Well, she knew how to negotiate.
She knew how to negotiate. Yeah, I don't know. So while I am very curious about ancient prostitution, I don't know like what was standard. It does seem like a lot for her to take all of those things, right? You would think he would come back for any one of them,
But she's also a woman without many options.
yeah.
She has no place to go. She can't go to school and become a nurse. She can't do anything but try to find a husband.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, there is, right? Did Shayla and her do Yibum? No, right? And did they do Halitza? No. So guess what? She has a special status. She is a guna, okay? She's a chained woman. She cannot marry anybody else because she is promised to Shayla. She is promised to him. So it is the laws around a woman being engaged and a woman being married in Judaism are very, very similar. If she sleeps with somebody else, she is guilty of adultery. She is engaged to Shayla, and she's in her father's house, and nothing is coming. She can't marry somebody else. Her years, her childbearing years, right? What is she, like 15, 16? I'm just kidding. But whatever. She's getting older. You have to remember, they die at like 32 at this time period. So she's getting older. What's her out? Like, how is she going to? So she's taking matters into her own hands, empowering herself. Sherry?
Looking at it a different way. She has faith that she is supposed to carry on the line, and therefore she realizes that maybe Shayla's not, but this is the only chance that she has in order for the line to be carried down. So she has the faith, and maybe she saves again, like Ruth does, the Jewish people.
Awesome. Okay, and we're going to highlight that again in a moment.
Actually, she just said what I was going to say. Is it possible that she did it to carry on the promises of Abraham through that line?
It is totally possible. Right? We don't know. All we're told in the text is she sees Shayla's grown up, and there she is.
She took the cloth and the robe, etc., as evidence, because she could have been called a prostitute if she had this baby out of wedlock.
Yeah.
And then she proved by having the evidence that Judah was really the father.
Okay, so let's go into that because then we're going to see that. We're going to see that in our text. So we are on page 24. You want to read? Okay, so I'm sorry, on verse 24. Verse 24. So let's read just verse 24 and pause for a second, and then we'll keep going.
And it was when about 3 months had passed that Judah was told, your daughter-in-law, Tamar, has committed harlotry. And moreover, she has conceived by harlotry. Judah said, take her out and let her be burned.
Okay, I just want to pause because she actually really did play the harlot, but in a totally different way. So I just love the irony of the accusation being right, but not what is meant. I just love that. It's such good writing. Yes, Annabelle.
Well, yes, but she knew who Judah was when he was coming at her.
Right, exactly.
So it's not exactly she was committing harlotry. She was protecting her husband's line.
Right.
With her father-in-law, if you will, but it is the line.
Right. I just mean the play, right? She wasn't a prostitute. She wasn't for hire for anyone. And in fact, she didn't actually get paid, right? What's she going to do with a stick, right? This is not, or somebody else's stamp. It's not, right? So
she was protecting herself.
She played the harlot. She pretended to be, which is accurate.
But she protected herself
Yes.
by asking the things she did.
Of course.
So that when she, if God forbid, gets accused later on, she will have something to say, not just anybody, but look who it is.
Right, and so now we're going to see that. So let's read the next couple of verses. We're going to see that.
One quick thing.
Quick thing. Is it a pun?
When it's a capital offense for a father-in-law to have relations with his daughter-in-law, except if all his sons are unavailable to perform the yibum, then he is allowed to have, or he's supposed to have relations with his daughter-in-law to provide for the.
Right, okay, so yes, so there's a lot, as I said, like all of these rules about who we're allowed to marry and who we're allowed, right, they change if the person dies, And by the way, Ruth and Boaz, right, Ruth, her husband died, right, his brother died, her father-in-law died, right, Boaz steps in, right, to have this, but she seduces him. That's a great story too. Also PG-13. Okay, let's keep going. Let's read 25 and 26.
As she was taken out, she sent word to her father-in-law, saying, "By the man to whom these belong, I am with child." And she said, "Identity, if you please. Whose are the signet, this wrap, and this staff?" Judah recognized, and he said, "She is right. It is from me, inasmuch as I did not give her to Shelah, my son, and he was not intimate with her anymore."
Okay. Woo! Right, so exactly what you're saying, right? She took these things so that in this moment, when word gets back to her father-in-law that she's pregnant, and he's like, take her out and burn her, okay? By the way, showing that he has risen in the ranks of society in Canaan too, right? That she can say, look whose stuff this is. This is the person who I became pregnant by, and he gets it. And what does he say? She's more right than I, right? She was right. I didn't do the right thing. But notice he doesn't keep her now as a wife, right? He's never intimate with her again. Okay, so here. You said you went.
Oh no, I was just going to say that
Oh my gosh, sorry.
you covered it already. That his sin of not giving his younger son was worse than what she did in trying to conceive.
Right. So he wants to tell us that we're wrong.
Rashi says, "V'lo yosifod." Some say this means he was not intimate with her again, while others say it means he did not cease being intimate with her. A similar case to this we find in connection with Eldad and Medad, "V'lo yosifu," which some translators, but they did not continue the prophecy, but Onkelos translated as "V'lo pasku," and he did not cease prophecy.
Okay. Well, so in either case, if Eldad and Medad kept prophesying, we have no idea what they were. And if he keeps procreating with Tamar, we've never met any of these other kids. And he does rejoin his family and become part of the scene again. Yes? Say your comment.
This looks more like a plan to get even.
Hmm?
I think it looks like it's her plan to get even because he wouldn't give Shiloh to her and her to Shiloh.
Right.
I wanted to comment that the Torah doesn't give us the origin of Tamar. Even though she might have been Canaanite, we don't really know. They don't talk to her about a Canaanite. She goes back to her father, and we also don't know who the father is. So maybe she was like a kosher woman for the people of Israel.
Okay. Yeah, there is, the Talmud does talk a little bit about, like, their speculation of who Shua is and that he's this, like, powerful guy and that, like, this is part of, like, oh, not Tamar. You're right, his first wife. Sorry, yeah.
People still name
Their kids Tamar?
Tamar.
You want, oh, yes, Tamar and Tamara. So it's a palm, right? And there's so much beautiful imagery in Jewish text about the palm. Like, right, it's Tzadik Katamar, Yifrach, Yifrach. So, like, the righteous, like the palm date, will flourish. If you think about the Middle East, Israel, right, there's beautiful palms. We actually have a lot of the same flora, which is interesting here in Miami. So the tamar is a beautiful tree that provides so much in that region, so it's a popular name. I actually have a class that I've taught to women. It's like the tragic tale of Tamar, right? Because there are multiple Tamars that have really tragic stories, way worse than this. She did not. No, you're right. Yeah, Kara.
So it is said that Tamar is the daughter of Shem. I know the book of Joshua speaks of that, and there are other sources. And Shem is Noah's son. He's a priest, and he's the one who taught Abraham about God and Jacob. So she very well knows the promises of God.
Beautiful. Okay, so looking at the rabbinic text about like what is her origin. So Shem and Ever is this famous school that like our people go and study in. That's actually the rabbis have Isaac going and studying there. Remember how like Isaac disappears after the sacrifice? Yeah.
So I always saw this as a sign of Tamar being really bold and decisive because in a sense I feel she was taking care of herself and she was looking out for herself and I'm cheating here because I had some notes on this. If you look at the verbs that are used in a lot of this, they were very positive action verbs, like where she says, or where they say, Vatsar big day, which means she discarded, she got rid of her widow's garb, and she covered herself. Batza'if, if I'm saying that right, Batza'if, she wrapped herself up, Batiaf, Vatialaf, and she stationed herself at the entrance. And those are all action verbs, and to me that says this woman was taking charge. I mean, maybe it's a feminist version of this, but she was taking charge to make sure that her life was going to go in the direction that she wanted more than what the world would have had.
Beautiful. All right, so here's this take charge woman, right? I'm a fan of her as well. Right, doing what she needed to do to empower herself. The rabbis also love her, right? Judah does. Judah says she is more right than me. Shh. Judah could have kept quiet, right? Could have kept quiet, but instead Judah says she is more right than me, and we get a mitzvah from her. The text that I gave you, number 6, from the Talmud Bavli and Baba Metzia. It says, it is better for a person to cast himself into a fiery furnace. It's better to do that than to publicly shame his friend. How do we know this? From Tamar. As it says, she was found and sent to her father-in-law. All right? So this tells us a couple of things. One, she sent these things privately to her father-in-law so as to not embarrass him. She didn't embarrass him, right? She could have had, called CNN and Fox News and said, hey, like this, he's saying burn me. This is who got me pregnant. She secretly lets him know, lets him do the right thing. So this is like when we are we get so many rules from this, okay? When we're correcting somebody, we're not supposed to do it like in front of a bunch of people and like embarrass them. Sometimes you have to do it in front of, right? If you're teaching, you don't want the wrong thing necessarily to come out, but we're supposed to do it privately, right? So this is like, all of cancel culture doesn't work, right? Here, in this text, right? We're not supposed to publicly shame someone. We should rather die than publicly shame someone. She would have thrown, it's better to throw yourself into a fiery furnace. She would have rather, right? She could have gotten burnt alive. But instead, but because she decided to do this so privately, because she put all of the power into his hands. Right? But better that than to embarrass someone. So definitely like a positive reflection of who Tamar is and what she gives. Oh my goodness. Okay. I didn't realize what time it is. Okay. Woo. Okay. So what comes next? She gives birth. And there are twins in her womb. And one sticks out his hands and they wrap the cord and then he pulls it, right? This sounds familiar, right? This like happened to Rebecca. And she named them Perez and Zerah. So on the back of your packet, you get a beautiful, who is the ancestors of King David? Okay?
Comes from her line.
He comes from her line. This child of Tamar and Judah, this only child, or at least the only one we care about, right? This only child is Perez. Well, they're twins, sorry. Perez becomes the great-great-grandfather of King David. Note, on the other side of his line, right, we have Ruth and Boaz, right? And what do we know about Ruth? She's a Moabite. Right? So she comes from the line of Lot. And remember where Moab comes from? Me'av, from my dad. This is a daughter sleeping with her father. Okay? So she actually comes from, the Messiah of our people comes from two forbidden sexual relationships. Like, not the Messiah eventually, right? Because King David is supposed to be, when the Messiah comes, will be from the Davidic line. By the way, it's cut off here because I got it from like a Christian website, and Jesus was there. So I was like, a little much. Okay. All to say, the Torah, again, is a very adult text. It is PG-13. And there's a lot of clouds and darkness and stuff around things that we deal with, right? Like around sex and sexuality, and what does that mean? And women empowering themselves. Like, this is a woman empowering herself and using her sexuality to like advance her cause. It's also a story of a completely different story. And this is the one that I think is like more of the nachemtza, more of the like pleasant thing, which is the story of Hira, this guy who we forget about all the time. And like how important it is to have friendship in your life. This friend was there to like bring him into the community, was there when he was depressed, was there when, to make sure that Judah wasn't embarrassed by his actions, and stood by him all of the way. So this beautiful section of Torah that like our rabbis used to like make us feel shame. Ironic, right? That the section of Torah they use to make us feel shame is also the one that they teach us how horrible it is to shame someone. May you have heroes in your life, right? People who even in those shameful, embarrassing moments you can turn to, who are going to stay by your side through the good and the bad, through the ups and the downs, and especially in those moments where you are ashamed of yourself. When you have someone you can talk to in those most embarrassing of spaces,